All right, now we're joined by Gregg Kirakawa, who's running for District Court Position 4. So go ahead with a 2-minute introduction.
Well, since you now know my name and my position, I will tell you that this is also May 9th, 2018, which is a very important day for me, not 2018, but May 9th, because it is 2 years ago today that I was appointed to the bench, something that I certainly did not expect, but was certainly gratified in getting a unanimous appointment by the King County Council. Prior to taking the bench, I was a trusted state litigator, also worked as a King County deputy prosecutor, and had done some work, not a lot, but have done contract public defense work as well. So I have to think I know not just civil litigation, which is most of my background, but I know a lot about the criminal justice system from both sides, from both the defense perspective and the prosecution. In my time on the bench, I've become very active in not just our court, because we have a number of, as most people know, that there's a lot of turnover on the bench, and so this time, 4 years from now, I'm probably going to be one of the senior members on my court, and one of the senior members of the Seattle or King County Court, having served, a grand 6 years on the bench. That's a turnover. So I've been very active in our court system. Currently also serve on our state courts, executive legislative committee. So we look at all the legislation during this last session that goes through the committee, and also serve on the state's pattern jury instruction committee. Those are the instructions given to juries for jury trials. That's how we try to explain law to jurors, so they can make the appropriate decisions after hearing all the evidence before the court. I find it interesting and very rewarding to be part of our court system after only being on 21 months on the bench. And having a fairly senior position in these roles.
Great. So now we have our 4 prepared questions, and they're right in front of you. If you want to turn them over and follow along as we read them aloud. And David, will you do number 1?
I'd be delighted. What barriers to access are there in the courts for unrepresented litigants, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable populations? And what steps have you taken to promote access to justice?
On both the civil and criminal side, I think the single biggest barrier to our court system continues, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, is financial resources. On the civil side, obviously, only so many people, can come in with attorneys. There are a lot of people who deserve due process and have a righteous case, but they can't afford an attorney, or an attorney won't take the case because of lack of compensation. So I do try, at least on the civil side, to make the civil litigation process more amenable and more open to civil litigants who are trying cases pro se. It's difficult, but certainly we do make all attempts to allow them to access our civil justice system, particularly through jury trials and hearings, to make sure they understand what they have to prove, how they have to prove it, and what level of evidence they're going to need. It does slow down the process, but it's something that myself and my colleagues always try to do and strive to do, to make sure that even a lack of resources does not deny a person justice in the civil justice system. In the criminal justice system, obviously you have public defense lawyers, but a large part of our penal system, or the penalty, so to speak, that makes life easier or more amenable to people to hold jobs, to have daycare, to raise a family, is the ability to not be in jail. And we do have a lot of systems of deferred prosecutions and alternative sentences that are, or say work release, that are afforded to people who can't afford to pay for those services or those treatments. Big thing we're doing right now is waiving those fees. It's a huge cost to the county, and there's some questions whether we have the authority to do so, but until the Supreme Court says otherwise, I don't feel that justice should be determined, or penalties should be determined based on the ability to pay for them.
Okay. Ben, number 2.
What state or federal Supreme Court decisions do you disagree with the most?
Oh, state Supreme Court decision, the recent one on conditions of pretrial release. Tripp is the, Blossom versus Tripp. Blossom versus Tripp is the name. Tripp is Gregg Tripp. He was a judge in Spokane. And he imposed a pre-trial release requirement in a DUI case that the person undertakes random UAs as a condition of pre-trial release. I don't know how many alcohol-related motor vehicle offenses the defendant had, Mr. Blomstrom, but it's a few. And so in not incarcerating him with 10, 15, 20, 30, $50,000 bail, Judge Tripp imposed a requirement that he undertake random UA, so he's not consuming alcohol while being outside and operating a motor vehicle. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. Found that unconstitutional. And I was part of the legislative committee, since I am on the executive legislative committee team, we said that's really bad judicial policy. Because what's the alternative? $50,000 in bail? You guys can't afford that. So here's a reasonable alternative that can help to ensure public safety, that the defendant could afford or could do, at least with some, obviously it's not free, but it certainly beats having to come up with tens of thousands of dollars in bail, because that's the alternative, and that's what our Supreme Court held. Now, the legislature this year passed legislation to overturn that. The question is it constitutional? We don't know that. It's going to be challenged. It's going to go up again. We'll see what happens.
Sherry, number 3.
Oh,
We're skipping.
you guys are, okay. Please describe your beliefs around the concept of restorative justice and whether you see a potential for judicial action from the bench as influential in that process.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I'm going to hedge a little bit about what your definition of restorative justice is. I will only say that I think, because there's a number of different interpretations of it, I believe that one of the things that courts of limited jurisdiction are supposed to do, as well as, say, courts, even though it's part of the Superior Court, our juvenile justice system, are try to rehabilitate or promote some sort of, promote an ability to make certain that person doesn't advance farther along on the chain and within our criminal justice system, i.e. to felonies or to Superior Court matters. There's a sort of a saying in our court system where courts of limited jurisdiction, district courts, municipal courts are people for crime, for big people who commit small crimes. And our juvenile justice system for small people who commit big crimes. And then our Superior Court system is for big people who commit big crimes. We have a system in place because I think our justice system is designed or should be designed to prevent big people from making big crimes, committing big crimes. And if we can stop them along the way, it's all better. It's all the better for society. In that regards, we almost go out of our way, at least I do, not to give long sentences, not to give consecutive sentences, find alternative ways for a person to achieve treatment or to do other alternatives to sentencing, such as community service or work release or restoration, such as if it's a monetary penalty, to pay that into reimbursements or to some sort of compensation to the victim, as opposed to just sitting in jail and waiting around for 60 days, because otherwise 60 days, 90 days, a year, whatever, they're the same person as they went in, just a year older, and no one benefits from that.
Jason, number 4.
Please share an incident or aspect of your work history that has changed or enhanced your interpretation of the law.
So you talked about the entire work history or my work history on my bench?
Your choice.
I think when I look at all the jobs that I think most people have, I think some of the more colorful jobs or the jobs that influence you tend to fall off your resume as you progress in your career, in your life. I think one of the most important single most important part of my work history is working at a gas station fixing cars when I was in high school. Did that for 2 years, all the way till moving to college, going to college at the University of Oregon. And the reason is, you meet everyone drives, and so you meet everyone that comes in, and a local gas station like we ran we weren't a mini mart or anything. We actually fixed cars. We didn't sell soft drinks. The only soft drinks we had, they were for us. We could drink them because we worked there. It's hot. And people come in and tell you their life stories, and they tell you what's going on with themselves, with their families, the things that they're going through, the things that their kids are going through, including being incarcerated as part, for stupid things, growing up in the 70s and 80s. And you get a better understanding of how the system works or doesn't work, at least I did. And it really made an impact on my life to understand, the number of people that somebody can come in contact with just fixing a car or just pumping gas. And it's the same approach that I look at when I'm on the bench, because we're a court of limited jurisdiction. If somebody's gonna come into the court system, unless it's for a family law matter, it's probably gonna be through courts of limited jurisdiction, whether it's a speeding ticket, whether it's some other motor vehicle offense or drug-related motor vehicle offense, whereas domestic violence offense, the equal opportunity crimes, they're gonna come through us. And it was really helpful to me to recognize my foundation and my upbringing and working in jobs at Palolo Auto Service, the gas station I worked at. That's the most common thing that I can relate to every day.
Thank you.
So now we'll open up to follow-up questions. These are 1-minute answers. People can ask whatever they want. And we will start with Jason and then Ben.
Yes, I'm going through the expungement process in Alabama, processing letter. I mean, I've sent it off already. And wondering, if somebody has a dismissal, could that be sealed or vacated?
In this state?
Yes, sir.
Yes and no. So we have a statute that provides we don't expunge, so it's always there. Misdemeanor crimes and certain misdemeanor, non-DV, non-sex crimes can be vacated. You get as many vacations as you can on the felony side. So if you have 5 that you want to vacate, although most people don't have 5 felonies, you can vacate all 5 if you go through the process. It's a very long process. It could be shorter for Class C felonies, but that's the legislature's call. I think it should be shorter. On the misdemeanor side, though, you only get one lifetime. And so you got to pick that one. So there's a question as to if you have 2, say, alcohol-related motor vehicle offenses, and one gets vacated, you still have one out there. The downside is that it never goes away. Instead of being a G for a guilty on your record, it's a V for vacation. So you can see it, it's there. You know what? Everyone knows what happened. As a matter of law, no one's supposed to hold that against you for employment purposes. Whether they do or don't is, a matter of question.
Thank you.
Ben?
Do you agree with many community and faith leaders that the new youth jail being built in Seattle not only sends the wrong message to our community, but is a waste of our money when compared to the dramatically lower cost of renovating the current facility and how the money might be otherwise spent for the benefit of the community?
So, as a judicial operation, I've seen, I've worked on the King County Council staff for a while, so I understand some of the financial costs with our juvenile justice system and that facility. I've been in that facility. It needs to be renovated or torn down. It's pretty bad. I mean, there are small furry creatures that run around in there in the daytime, not at night. I've seen the mice, rats, they're there. I don't know whether it costs, I've seen figures as to whether renovation will be cheaper than reconstruction. The voters have made the decision. I will only say this, that I certainly would like to think our juvenile justice system does a better job, can do a better job in making sure that juveniles don't continue a path of criminal convictions in their life. On the other hand, just yesterday, I had a gentleman inside that had 2 felony assault cases, one with a deadly weapon, a 3rd felony as an adult assault case, and then was before me yesterday on a 4th felony assault 2 against his girlfriend, 8-month pregnant girlfriend. He was 21 years old. I think we do need a criminal justice system, or juvenile justice system that does provide rehabilitation. But there are those out there who I think should be incarcerated. I'll be brutally honest, because they do present a public safety risk.
Okay, additional questions? Nicole?
Can you describe your most difficult case? I might read it that way.
I mean, from a, well, today was a perfect example. I have a guy here before me. We do a lot of alcohol-related motor vehicle offenses, DUIs, and those types of things. And it is probably the only equal opportunity crime out there, DUI. Anybody can get it. Presidents of the United States, Supreme Court justices. But it is also something that is a public safety problem. So I had a guy who has 5 lifetime. This is number 5. He's got number 6 pending in Spokane. But they're spaced out. So technically, he only has his first one, because they wash out after 7 years or 10 years, depending if it's a felony or a misdemeanor. So he's got his first one. And the prosecutor's asking for a year in jail. And he's got a pending one in Spokane. What do I do? This is his first one, but technically this is going to be his 5th or 6th. So I set that matter over. I'm going to get a pre-sentence report. I'm going to take a look at it, and we're going to try and craft something that protects public safety while addresses his alcohol dependency issues. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but those things, he works, has a family, has a job. This is undisputed. Put him in jail for a year, his family goes without their breadwinner. Is the public safe for a year from him driving? Probably, but what happens after a year? There's no treatment, nothing else. He just comes out a year older. Yeah, that troubles me.
Seattle prosecutors are seeking to vacate more than 540 convictions against people caught carrying small amounts of pot in the city before legalization. Do you believe this policy should be expanded to include other marijuana offenses?
I wouldn't have a problem with it. You know, it's a prosecutorial decision. I can't even think of when I had a marijuana case before me. King County hasn't been, even when I was a prosecutor, and that's a long time ago, we weren't charging simple possession under 40 grams. I don't know that it's appropriate for me to actually take a position on this matter, because it obviously could come before me as a judicial officer. All I can say is that it has been a pleasure to work with both the previous administration and the current prosecuting attorney in dealing with small misdemeanor drug offenses. I think there's a more thoughtful approach than just spending a mandatory 1 day in jail as required by law for simple marijuana possession. I think it's a smarter way to approach our drug cases, especially at the misdemeanor level. But beyond that, probably shouldn't make any more comments.
Time for 1 or 2 more questions. Ben.
You had mentioned earlier that the DUI is kind of a universally applied law. Do you equal opportunity law? Thank
It's
you.
an equal opportunity law. Anybody can get it.
Do you find that it is prosecuted equally,
In King
depending
County-
on color and wealth?
Well, the remedy may not always be meted out equally. And the only reason why is because you can get what's called a deferred prosecution. You have to pay for it though, and it costs between $4,000 and $8,000 depending where you go. It's a 2-year treatment program, a 5-year commitment. If you stay clean for 5 years, your charge goes away. So can somebody who is on SSI, who is functionally disabled but otherwise can, live a otherwise normal life, have opportunities to that? No, of course not. And so we try to waive as many fees as we can and make sure that they can get the same opportunity as somebody else can. Same thing for work release. You can go to jail during night, sleep in jail, and go to work in the daytime. But if for some reason you don't have a job, you can't do that. You don't qualify for that. You don't qualify for school, or not. Actually, schooling will count. But if you don't qualify for, say, certain types of, rehabilitative program, like job training, those types of things, you can't get into work release. So it's either jail or not. That's it. So, no, on the back end, no, it's not equal.
So we are about out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
I would only say that, again, I was appointed 2 years ago to the bench. I had a pretty good idea, I thought, what I was getting into. I didn't. In reality, every day is an absolute new experience. Everybody that comes before me is new and has never seen me before, and so I have to make sure that I haven't seen that person before, even though I think I have. And every day is a new experience on the bench. I'm enjoying it, and I hope that I'm just doing the best I can and living up to the expectations of me and the people who appointed me to the position. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.